fate is before you. Choose wisely. Coming to you live from one of the greatest places in the world, the city of God, Copacabana, Brazil. Listen, a lot of things have been going on since I've come here, and I've been still had the opportunity to look at certain things in social media. And one of the things I want to comment on is the relationship issue with Gabrielle Union and Dwayne Wade. I've made this quote or said this quote several times, and I think it still remains today. Frederick Douglass once said that power never conceded without a struggle. It never have, and it never will. I'm going to deal with a title today because the name of this title is She Only Respects Strength and Power. That's right. She only respects strength and power. When I look at Dwayne Wade referring power to his wife in a relationship, what he doesn't understand is that he's actually cutting off his own foot in the attempt to be relevant. Women by nature look up to men. That's why women normally want tall men. Women have what's called an unconscious and a conscious motivation to follow a man. Now, we know that there are some women that will actually wear the mask just to get a man in a relationship. And sometimes women will go through various theatrics until she gets you, then she will pull the mask off. But it's always a constant battle and a constant struggle. And I think the words of theology said it better, that she will have a desire for her husband, but he will rule over her, meaning she will be at conflict for power, but it's the man's responsibility to stand strong and to rule over her, not in aggression, not in unfairness and injustice, but to guide and love his wife with discipline, structure, order, and expect her to respect him as a man. You see, the love currency for a man is respect. The love currency for a woman is the emotions of love, something that's fickle and something that passes away over time. When a woman can love a man, even when she does not feel like loving that man, that's the highest honor of respect for a man. Because when a woman can operate outside of her hard drive, which is her feelings, and she can do it in spite of how she feels, that's a sign that she really loves that man because she respects his dominion. But the problem that I see today, and I think a lot of men are seeing it, especially some of my younger men. I want to speak to our young brothers because our young brothers, if you don't be aware of this, you will be pigeonholed by a lot of this BS where men are deferring their power to their women. There was a time when I grew up, and when I grew up as a younger man, in the past, you saw men exude power in the relationships. You saw men more in leadership positions. But then we have a situation where a lot of men are trying to be relevant and they're trying to be PC. They have deferred their power to the woman. And in the pursuit of deferring that power, the woman, from a conscious or unconscious perspective, does not respect him. That's why after so many women have had their fun, they normally marry simps. They normally marry men that are deemed to be weak, men that sacrifice important masculine principles. That's the conscious simp. Sacrificing important masculine principles. These are men that know to do better, but they choose not to do it because they have been conditioned to acquiesce that power to the woman. Another concept of the conscious simp is when he suppressed irrational male principle. Because a simp, masculine principle. Because a conscious simp, he's a man. He's been trained through the 10 years of manhood, and he knows what he's doing wrong. But because he defers power, then he loses key elements of his masculinity. But the greatest and the most dangerous simp is the unconscious simp, because the unconscious simp is supplementing irrational male patterns. The unconscious simp is not aware of his ignorance, and that's what Dwayne Wade is. He is an unconscious simp. He is more or less deferring power to a woman that has a spirit of control. She acts more as the dominant one in the relationship, and he sees to the deferred power. And see, here's the pathology, guys, that we have now in this modern society. We have a generation where young men are not raised by masculine men. They haven't even seen masculine authority. And the reason why a lot of our women cannot respect a lot of our men, because they're grown up in households or matriarchies where the woman or the mother is ruling the relationship. And so when you go through generations of not seeing masculine authority, and on the flip side, as a young man, when you grow up in a family where you've never seen your father in a leadership position, then it causes a lot of what I call cognitive dissonance, where the person is not aware of that alarming or ringing bell that's going on inside their head. As a clinical therapist, there's a such thing called behavior modification. And the behavior modification, it should be in a relationship where both parties benefit. We call that in the clinical term an equilibrium or a homeostasis. So where there's balance in the relationship, the woman benefits and the man benefits. In essence, in science, it's called a symbiotic relationship. But you got a lot of relationships now where men are losing their identities because they are simps. They're either conscious simps or unconscious simps. And I want to give you some anecdotal feedback from what I see as I'm here in Rio de Janeiro and on the beach of Copacabana. The men here are men because the government does not endorse some of the negative impacts of caustic feminism. Feminism that seeks to rebel and feminism that seeks to usurp the authority of the man in the home. And listen, there are some women that they are not aware of doing it. On the hard drive, there's some decent women, good women with good hearts and good intentions. But some have been socialized to be masculine, and some choose to be masculine out of rebellion. Either way, it's something called autocorrection that they got to do, and it's up to that man to check that woman when she exhibits that type of behavior. Men were made to lead in their families and in their homes and in their communities. And when the men are leading, then guess what? The women actually feel safe. You got a lot of women that wear that fake bravado or, I'm a strong, independent woman. But it's really a thinking error when a woman says that she is strong and wholly independent, because to use the moniker independent means that you are 100% 100% efficient in whatever you do. But the negative connotation behind the word independent is the presupposition that I don't need a man. And that's a thinking error called the minimization of the man and the magnification of the woman and her importance. Because we all know that if you take all the skilled men from this planet, the plumbers, the artisans, the civil engineers, the electricians, the plumbers, the construction workers, if you took every man from this planet, even me, myself, as a man, I would perish because I'm not skilled in that area. I have some blue-collar training. I worked in the factory for years before I became a white-collar professional. And I can do things like cut grass and do some repairs. I consider myself well-rounded to be an educated man. But some of the nuances and the metrics that are associated with building empires, building infrastructures, I don't have that the power to do that. And so when I look at this Dwayne Wade scenario, Dwayne Wade started doing a bunch of weird stuff in the past. And if you have a history of Dwayne Wade, you'll know that Dwayne Wade didn't have a father growing up consistently in his life. Dwayne Wade often exhibited some feminine traits. And see, here's the problem with a lot of simps. Some simps can be masculine towards men, but they're very, they defer power when they get around certain women. And what Dwayne Wade does not understand, the more he defers power, the more she's going to lose respect for him. And that's the problem with a lot of relationships now. The men actually lose power by giving up too much. To get the most out of your woman and to get the most out of her in a relationship, you have to make sure she's working as it relates to benefit you so that us or all the family can be beneficial. And if she can't do that, then she has no place in your life. You should never lose your essence or your worth over a woman, because women come and go. There are beautiful women all over the world. There are very attractive women here in Brazil, very attractive. But at their core too, they're still women. But the difference between the women here versus the women abroad is that in the US, is that these women have been conditioned to respect masculine authority. The men over here don't play, because most women over here do not have the backing of caustic feminism. I saw a scenario on the street where a guy was in an alternative lifestyle, and he came on the man's establishment, and the man didn't like it. Actually, he was a transgender person, and he told him to go. And the man had a bat, and and he didn't hurt him. But my point is, men here are men. And when a man is operating his masculine energy on a consistent basis, where he's setting terms and he's setting boundaries, then he becomes an optimized male. One of the 7 core principles that I told you guys that a man must understand in order to become an optimized male is understanding female or woman psychology. Once you understand woman or female psychology, you're on one of the 7 steps to becoming an optimized male. Because as I once said, I always said in the past, if it's not 7, it's not kosher. If it ain't kosher, it ain't right. And so in order for it to be right, in order for you to be complete, you must understand the tenets of female psychology. And that's why I started this YouTube channel, The Kosher Clinician, because many men or many professionals are not talking about this psychopathology. They're not talking about how when they defer power, it impacts them as a man. And a lot of times in the traditional world of clinical therapy, they look at things from a more liberal perspective, or what I call the feminist lens. But, I felt like it was important that I, as a Black man, and also I, as a clinical therapist, use this platform to empower mostly our younger men, but also the middle-aged brothers too. And to the women that are listening, there are some great women out there. And I salute you, beautiful sister. There are some women out there that want to do the right thing. They want to submit to their husband's authority. They want a strong family. They want to be in relationships where they're not based on this liberal construct called egalitarian relationships. And see, that's the dangers of this thing called the egalitarian relationship, because in the egalitarian relationship, they say that the man and woman equally share his power. And I said, that's nonsense, because you can't have 2 captains of a ship. Even if you believe in theology, in heaven, the Bible said that God is the Father and Christ is the Son. And why the relationship is respected and there's a deference of power from time to time, at the end of the day, Christ knows that God is over him. Men do things based on order and based on hierarchy. And when a man operates on his masculine core principles, then once again, as I said earlier, the family benefits the most. If you're around a woman that's talking about egalitarian relationships, because they don't really believe in egalitarian relationships, they only want egalitarian relationships as it benefit them. Because the same woman that say, oh, we're equal, she still expects you to go get your head blown off if somebody breaks into the house. That same woman that says she believes in egalitarian relationships is not the woman that's outside cutting grass and doing car repairs. See, when it comes down to them being egalitarian, then they say, we'll get somebody to pay for it. So it's almost like you got to do your duty as a man. But when it's time for her to do her duty as a woman from a traditional perspective, like cutting grass, changing oil, washing the cars, defending the home, paying a large portion of the bills. When it comes down to her benefit, she want to find an escape route. That's why I say as a man, you got to set boundaries and principles early on. And don't get caught up in no feelings and her beauty and how good the sex is. Don't get caught up in that nonsense. I'm giving you guys some free game, man. Because over time, it will destroy you as a man. The only thing she respects is strength and power. And because like so many of our young men, they're not used to seeing masculine men in the home. They're not used to seeing masculine men in society. I remember a time when I was a kid, it was nothing to see a male principal, to see male principals. You saw more men in leadership positions. And I'm not saying that a woman can't be in a leadership position, but what's happening now, we are aggrandizing or building a woman at the expense of a lot of these young men. But yet at the same time, the women complain about the men that have been socially engineered to acquiesce power to them. And so you have a culture of simps that some men are actually masculine on surface. They will defend their honor towards a man, and they'll get aggressive towards a man. But when it comes down to a woman, they defer power. And that's what happened to Samson. When you look at Samson was an unconscious simp. Samson was a type of man that deferred his power. He knew what he needed to do, which was the right thing, which was to stand on his sanctum. Because when you're standing on your sanctum, you're saying to yourself that woman cannot go into that special place in my life, or that more or less holy place in my life, which is your principles. See, when a man has his sanctum, he has principles that can't be violated or compromised. I don't care how pretty the woman is. So Samson was a conscious simp. Samson was a conscious simp because he sacrificed important masculine principles, or he suppressed important masculine principles. Because as a masculine man, in his heart, he knew that he was disobeying the Most High, or disobeying God or Yahweh. He knew it. But because Samson was a conscious simp, he chose not to follow his internal hard drive, or to stand on your sanctum, which is his holy place, that place of masculinity that cannot be rocked off. That's called a boundary. But see, the problem with a lot of men in relationships, I think I've been guilty of it, every man has been guilty of it to some degree, but when you know better, you do better. They don't have a sanctum. And when you don't have a sanctum, then that basically means you don't have standards in your life. And when you don't have standards, then she can't feel comfortable, because women need a man that they can look up to, whether it's from an unconscious or unconscious perspective. That's why women like tall men, because tall men can be the illusion of power. Now listen, to my men, the brothers that are shorter, height don't always mean that man is strong and dominant. It can mean that he's strong and dominant, but there are some men that are 5'9", 5'10" that's taller than stronger than taller men, and they can get dirty with a taller man. But for the sake of the argument, the height symbolizes power and strength. And it's a damn shame when you look at a man like Dwayne Wade, that's a masculine man towards other brothers, is to firm his power to this woman. And that's the same thing that happened once again with Samson. He lost his purpose because he was not standing on his sanctum, or standing on your sanctum. And he was sacrificing important masculine principles, just like Adam. Adam actually was the first step, because Adam knew what God told him. But he chose not to operate in his masculine hard drive, therefore he failed. So I had to do this show while I was in Copacabana, Brazil, because based on what I'm seeing, the men here actually have an inner sanctum where they stand firm on their masculine authority. And so don't be like Dwayne Wade. Don't be a simp. Don't be a man that's being socially engineered by this woman that's pushing this nefarious agenda, where men are more or less becoming things that are more or less based on being PC instead of being masculine. And that's what it appears to me, that Dwayne Wade is more concerned about being PC than he's more concerned about being a man and being an example to a lot of other young men. So I want you guys to let this marinate as we're here at Copacabana Beach, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And it's about 10 o'clock here in Rio. And we will be continuing to be bringing to you live with key things that can keep brothers strong and safe. And remember this: if it ain't 7, it ain't kosher. If it ain't kosher, it ain't right. I want you to take the time to enjoy this day and let this marinate in your conscience and in your mind and in your spirit. And realize this: the more you stand on masculine principles, the more you stand on your sanctum, then you're becoming a man. But when you're not standing on your sanctum, if you take that S off, you become soy. That means you'll operate in estronized energy. And when you're operating in estronized energy, you're not becoming the best version of yourself. And all S's and all love and all salute to the brotherhood. Well.